Welcome to Cafe Technica.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. This is Tom Roberto, your technology shaman. I am here today with a very, very special guest. His name is Jeff Wald. He and I have gone back many years, and he has been the founder of some of the best and brightest service companies that I've been witness to. Jeff, please say hello.
Tom, it is great to be here. Thank you for having me, and hello to everybody out there.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, Jeff, you've got some pretty big things that have happened over the last couple of years, right? Like you've been witness to a lot of different things.
That is true, man. It has been a very exciting few years professionally and personally.
Yeah, for sure. So, give a little introduction, a little background of kind of where you came from. I feel like the story is really interesting, and I think it would resonate with a lot of
Sure. Look, I'll start rambling. You just cut me off if I'm going too long.
people. No
But
problem.
Tom, as you may know, I started my career with J.P. Morgan as an M&A banker. After business school, I did my first startup. It's a content sharing platform called Spinback. That company failed miserably, left me completely bankrupt. A lot of people, everyone celebrates startups, right? Oh, startups are so cool, so
Yeah,
fun. Most startups fail. The data is the
yeah,
data. And this one failed. It particularly hurt because in the hubris of youth, I thought, why would I take anybody else's money? Of course, this is going to succeed, and I'll own 100% of it. Everybody else is stupid. And when it failed because I ran out of money and was bankrupt. And so,
right.
okay, lessons learned. Look, in startup land, we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and we keep going, right? That's the game.
Right.
Okay. So I did that after, a severe bout of depression, to be candid.
Yeah,
You
I'm sure.
lose
Yeah, I would be
everything.
too.
You've spent your whole life with everyone telling you how amazing you are, and you go to these wonderful schools, and you work in these wonderful places, to suddenly be bankrupt and, having failed was tough. But startup land, we pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, and we keep going. The key variable to success with a tech startup is, are you willing to persist? And so, picked myself up, dusted myself off, took some outside capital. And, it's funny, I always say friends and family, but the truth is my family has no money. So it was really just friends,
Right.
not friends and family. And we ended up, eventually that company gets sold to Salesforce. It was a good outcome, not an amazing outcome, but really good. I took some time off from startup land because this stuff is exhausting. I worked in an activist hedge fund called Barrington Capital. I still sit on some boards of directors through that experience. And then in 2010, I started the company that brought me to your shores, a company called Work Market, enterprise software that enables companies to organize, manage, and pay their on-demand workers. And that was a big endeavor, man. We raised 60, 70 million from SoftBank, Union Square Ventures, a bunch of other VCs. We had the pleasure of having you and a number of other people as our customers. And we eventually sold that company to ADP. That one was a great outcome. The team made money. My investors made money. I had the pleasure of serving on the senior leadership team of ADP for 2.5 years and had just the most amazing experience. Loved that place, loved those people. It was awesome. I learned so much, but I agreed to stay for 2.5 years, and 2.5 years and a day came. And while I
Yeah.
love them all dearly, if you want to move fast and break things and build stuff quickly, ADP is not the best place for you. And so I've been, dabbling. Now I've kind of co-founded and served as chairman of a number of startups, and just launched a new HR tech startup that I am running myself, where I'm the CEO. We're still way too early to really kind of dive into it, but it's just exciting to be back in the chair and be building again.
Yeah, what do you think it is that you keep coming back? Because I've been an entrepreneur and had that entrepreneurial spirit, but I've never been able to do what you have done, and some others that I know have done. And I really admire what you guys do and how you do it. What do you think it is that brings you back to that? Because like you said, it can be depressing, right?
Well, look, it certainly can be. And a startup is a series of failures until you actually either eventually fully fail or you break through it and you succeed. And those failures are tough. A customer leaves, an investor doesn't get over the finish line, a team member leaves. Those things they hurt. and they're little knocks and they knock you down. But again, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you just keep going forward. What brings me back to it, honestly, is I'm not qualified to do anything else. Like, what is the job interview there? Like, hi, I'm Jeff. You need me to start your company? No. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, is
yeah.
this the interview for me to run the whole thing? Because either I can start it or I can run it. I can't do anything in between. I'm not qualified. And one
Right,
can
right.
argue quite depthly that I'm not qualified to start or run a company either. But those are the two things that I have experience doing. So at this stage of my career, I don't have anything else to
Well, you
do.
do. Yeah, right. No, I hear that, man. I'm sort of I have that same feeling in my career based off what I've done. But like, so you've been in the technology space kind of your whole career, right? Like,
Mhm.
how do you not let the technology consume you, right? Because you're always dealing with development teams, you're always dealing with stuff like how does that play into your personal life?
Well, I will tell you, this is a great question, Tom, and I think it's something that as a society we are struggling with as we are continuing to innovate on these fronts and we get used to new technologies. Look, I am a compartmentalizer,
Mm.
very much so, right? I step out of this office and that's it. I'm out of this office. At home, my phone is usually on airplane mode. My phone all day, by the way, is on do not disturb. So
Wow.
nobody is getting to me. Except for those that can break through the do not disturb, right? My wife is 9.5 months pregnant, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do have to respect the fact that she needs to get in touch with me. Um, but I'll tell you this, like, you know, friends would always complain. They're like, "Oh, we can never reach you." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have a phone for your convenience.
Yeah, right,
I have a
right.
phone for my convenience." And it's important to note why you have these devices. If you want to be gotten and you want to constantly be on looking at things and hearing alerts, then great, you have a phone that can do that. If that's not why you got this technology, then
Right.
put it in airplane mode, put it on do not disturb, turn off your notifications. It's an amazing device for you when you want it. Don't let it run you. And
Sure.
so, and I did the same, honestly, with Wi-Fi. I had no Wi-Fi in my house either
Really?
before pandemic. Yeah. When the pandemic broke, that was my first move, was to call Verizon, like, "Oh my god, I need Wi-Fi in the house now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
can't go anywhere." And I hadn't gotten any cash out of the ATM yet, so when the guy showed up, I literally paid him off in beef jerky, as a tip. Obviously, paid my Verizon, but I was like, "Dude, I gotta give you something. I don't have cash. Here's 2 pounds of beef jerky," because I had a ton of beef jerky stocked up
That's
for the
crazy.
pandemic breaking. Anyway, yeah, look, I'm not a rocket science or a brain surgeon, right? Nothing I do is really going to impact on a day-to-day anybody's life. I don't keep the site up or anything we build,
Yeah,
and anything that I do can wait until tomorrow.
sure.
It's gonna be okay. Like, everyone's like, "Oh my god, yes, we will get to it tomorrow. Nobody's going to die." And understanding that and being able to create a culture where if you're on, you're on, right? If you're keeping the website up and it goes down, you fix it immediately. The
Right,
SLA is right now. But if that's not your function, tomorrow is fine.
right, right.
It's going to be okay.
See, like so this has been my message, right? Like the legacy that I'm trying to build here is that you and I are similar in age. Like, we remember the world before the internet, right? And like it's a weird generational type thing where it's like, I remember before all of this stuff, right? And you're a perfect example of you can be very successful without some of this stuff, right? So it's in how you use it that I think makes you like a power user or an extremely successful type person, and you're kind of saying that right now.
I will say is, and I think you and I maybe have talked in the past about how I'm writing a movie.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines from the movie, and I don't, it's definitely not mine, is nothing's inherently good or evil. It depends on how you use it.
Right, right,
Right? Like, oh, the phones are evil. No, no, no. The phones are definitively not evil.
right.
It depends on how you use it. Social media is evil. No, no, no. It depends on how you use it.
That's true. It's very true. So like to that end, like are you iOS? Are you Android? Like what company
I
are
mean, I'm
you?
iOS. I think the Android, I think that's ridiculous for Android. I'm sorry for my friends out there, but you're the ones to aren't turning the chat green. You're the ones that we can't send pictures into the chat because of it. Like, and I appreciate that's not really your fault.
Yeah,
That's Apple and Google not being nice, and that's ridiculous.
right.
But No, look, I am iOS, although I tried not to be. I was BlackBerry
So was
up
I.
until
So was
literally
I.
like 8 years ago
Yeah.
is when I finally switched. Like I held out as long as humanly possible. I believe I was actually taking a lunch walk with my head of sales at Work Market, and we passed a homeless man who was passed out on the streets of New York,
Wow.
and he and I had the same phone. And the head of sales was like, "Oh look, that guy's got your phone, man." I'm like,
You gotta
all
go.
right,
Yeah.
it's time for an upgrade. Time for an upgrade."
That's crazy, man. So actually, good segue, right? Like I've been tracking everything that Apple just released with, Apple Intelligence, and I just spent some time with Google yesterday at their offices in the city. What are your thoughts about all the AI stuff? So you have Gemini, you have Apple stuff, you've got Chat GPT. Like, where does AI fit into the construct of where you think things are going?
So it's a very broad question, Tom. Look,
Sure.
the thing I'm going to draw on here is the book I wrote on the future of work to talk about the robots and AI and this fourth industrial revolution. And I'll say this, AI will have a substantive impact. And I'm going to just talk about it in regards to jobs, because that's what I'm kind of quote
Yeah.
unquote expert in. It will have a substantive impact. But anybody that's out there saying, oh my God, all these jobs are going to go, I would just caution by saying that sentence has never been true. This new tech exists, therefore all these jobs go. That sentence has never once in the history of work been accurate. Could it be accurate this time? Sure, it could. I don't see why this time is different. So the changes will occur to how we do work. That definitively will occur. There will be job losses. That will certainly occur. There will be new jobs created. That will certainly occur. How those three factors combine over the next 5, 10, 20 years to impact the number of jobs, the amount of work that can be done, productivity rates, and things like that is way too early for anybody to have that well thought out an opinion on.
Sure.
And so I would say, watch this space. A lot's going to happen. It's going to change. These changes will be much more rapid than the changes in the first, second, or third industrial revolutions. But the notion, again, that this new tech exists, therefore that job goes, has never been true. And I don't see a reason why with Gen AI, all of a sudden it will be true.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. It's like anything else, right? It's in how you apply it, how you use it, that kind of thing. So at Work Market, automation was a big piece of that business, right? How you
True.
automate reaching people and hiring and like all of that stuff was automation. How do you see a difference between, because I think a lot of people confuse automation with like Gen AI, right? Like what you can actually apply AI to. How do you see that difference today? Just because you're early, right? Like it's very early. How do you see the difference?
Yeah. Look, this is an overly simplistic analysis, but sometimes we need to simplify things in order to have a conversation. Because again, this is a very complex issue.
Right.
Gen AI is basically autocomplete.
Mm.
It autocompletes a sentence. Now, it autocompletes a sentence by crunching trillions of things every nanosecond and coming up with what is the next best word to go there. But that's why when people say, oh, it's lying, it's making things up. No, it is not thinking. It's not
Right.
lying. It just believes the next best word should be this. And after that, the word should be that, then this, then this. So it comes up with a string of words that it doesn't understand,
Right.
but it just says, here's a string of words. Fine. That's interesting. And certainly it can help us produce copy and do a bunch of other things. It is a form of automation, but automations to me is simply how do we take a repetitive high volume task, and our most famous examples of automation are certainly machines. Like they print out the same thing over and over again. A mechanic stamping the same thing out of a sheet of metal. I don't need someone to sit there and cut the sheet of metal into that shape. The same thing can get stamped again and again and again. So can I automate or do automatically a repetitive high volume process? Whatever that is. If that repetitive high volume process is just producing some content, great, Gen AI does that well. That repetitive high volume process is giving out money from a teller, an ATM can do that very well. If that repetitive high volume process is stamping things out of a manufacturing line, a robot can do that very well. Those are automation. And I view Gen AI as one form of automation.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting take on it. Like it's almost as if it fits into that automation kind of umbrella, right? Like, so I mean, these things are very complex, right? Like they're complex topics. I think people get very confused with machine learning and LLMs and like all of the nitty gritty that goes into it. Like, what's your best advice from a high level? How do you keep things simple? What's the trick that you have to be able to kind of boil it down to make it work for
Um, the short answer is, look, I've done a ton of reading and research. I have spent countless hours, and I speak specifically about the book, right? Like, in order to write that book, all right, it's 247 pages. I mean, how many tens of thousands of hours went into that?
you? Right.
I mean, probably not many tens of thousands, maybe 20,000 hours between myself and researchers and editors and like a lot of time went into that.
Sure.
And so, look, I will say this. One of the things that annoys me the most is when people jump into the public square and just start talking.
Yeah.
As an example, during the pandemic, I was on a panel and a guy says, well, I think 50% of the workforce is going to work remotely, going forward. I said, okay, that's interesting. How do you juxtapose that with the fact that only 42% of the workforce can work remotely?
Right. Right.
And he said, oh, well, I didn't know that. And I said, well, shouldn't you know that before you open your mouth?
Right.
And if you're going to speak in the public square, you should know what the heck you're talking about, or you should be shouting down.
Yeah.
If you're going to put forward something ridiculous and you don't know what you're saying, then don't speak.
Right.
And the number of times I have said, in even interviews like this, I'm going to say this, I'll say, look, I just don't know enough to answer that question.
Sure.
It's a perfectly fine response. I
Right.
don't know enough to answer that question. Or maybe it's, look, I have an opinion, but it's not informed.
Yeah.
Great. You are entitled to your opinions, God bless. But if you're going to stand in front of other people and influence their opinions, you darn well better know what you're talking about.
No, that's a great point. I mean, and I don't think a lot of people do that anymore because of social media and whatever. Like they feel the need to have opinions and to have,
Sure.
some sort of stance. And it's like, I agree with you there. So that's actually a good, like transition, right? So you mentioned your wife's, very close to giving birth. You're going to be dealing with children now. So like what, I'm sure and in the startup space, you tend to work with people getting out of college and interning and things like that. Like, what have you seen with the generation that's coming up? And, are there any concerns there, how they're using technology? Maybe back to the point of like, can they simplify or do they just have opinions for opinion's sake? Like, what do you see there?
Well, I'll tell you this. In researching the book, one of the many things that I was surprised by when we go into the data, and just to backtrack, right, that is the point of the book. If we're going to look at the future of work, we should look at the history, we should look at the data, and we should talk to the people that actually do labor resource planning at our corporations to understand what they think. And if we look at those three, we don't create a crystal ball. We at least have a logical, reasonable, defensible point of view as to what may happen. And in doing that, I discovered something I found kind of interesting. So Gen Z, whatever the heck we want to call them, on average stays in a job for about 2 years. Everyone's like, oh, they're so flighty. They're doing this, they're doing that. Okay. In 1980, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics started stratifying their data by age, that same age cohort, 18 to 24, let's call it. Do you know how long they stayed in a job?
How long?
2 years.
Really?
Yeah, look, man, is this generation different? Every generation says the generation that's coming up is different.
Yeah.
There are nuances that are different. They are more digitally native. They are more green. They're more this, they're more that. Okay, I think that's fine. But, and some of them, are very fragile and need this and that.
Yeah.
But so was I when I was 21.
That's true. That's true, right?
A 21-year-old or a 22-year-old just starting their career is kind of similar to a 21 or 2-year-old starting their career 40 years ago. We just forget what it was to be that insecure, but yet, cocky and think you know everything and not really know what you want to do. So you try something and it's not your thing. So you try something else. So of course there are differences generation to generation, but I do think the kind of broad notions that they're so different tend not to be supported by data.
Interesting. So to that end, like, is there something that was instilled in you at a young age from a different generation that stuck with you today that you've actually like pivoted on?
I thought a lot about this in kind of my reading of what we might talk about today. And I think back to my father and a conversation he and I had, and we didn't have many,
Yeah, yeah.
to be clear. Um, and he said, "You're about to go off to college, and I'm going to pay for it, and I expect you to do the same for your children." But, which is what my father did for me, he said.
Sure.
He said, "But the difference is I'm not going to ask of you, when are you going to give your 2 years to your country?" Which is what my father asked of me, which is what his father asked of him.
Wow.
And you should recognize that you live at a point in time in human history and in a country where that is not required of you.
All right.
And that stuck with me. And I juxtaposed that, Tom, with my business school, who has this mantra of you should divide your life into thirds: learn, earn, serve. Meaning you need to, in the last stage, serve. Obviously, you should intersperse some service the whole time, and you should be learning the whole time and hopefully earning the whole time. But it becomes the main focus of our lives at that point. Both of those things stuck with me, and they were especially poignant post 9/11, right? When the country really was reeling, and okay, maybe this is now a point in time in which the country should have everyone serve for 2 years. And I'm a huge proponent of the notion of a service requirement for everybody. I took that, it applies to my everyday life, whether that's charitable giving, whether that is volunteering. There was a period of time where I was a reserve officer in the NYPD, an auxiliary officer, which is, the NYPD's reserves, for lack of a better term, where I was a volunteer for, the better part of 10 years.
Wow.
Once every 2 weeks, you go in, you put on blue, and you walk the streets. And everyone has to find a way to serve. It is not just important for our society that we have everybody bought into the society and doing it. It's important for you as a
Right.
person. And as I started a new company, service is one of the important things we talk about. That it can take a day off and go and do work for a charity. If anyone wants to donate, we will match it. I think that's very rare for a startup that it doesn't even have a product yet to do. Like, these are important things for anybody to be doing.
That's really interesting. I was actually amazed. I spent some time with the founder of the company I'm with right now, and I was shocked to learn that he was, because being overseas in a different country, they do mandate service, right? And he actually was a POW, and like I didn't know that, and that was like an incredible story, and like an incredible experience that he had that now impacts life. And like when you hear things like that, you don't think about that here in America, right? Like there's nobody that talks about that. And I think sometimes people come back and they go, "Well, I didn't go to college. I was in the armed forces or something like that," and they feel as if they're not prepared. And it's like, no, I feel like you might have a preparation that none of us have, right? Like, totally different experience. Do you think technology has brought that, like, not that specific thing with armed forces, but like, do you think it's brought that idea of service and earning and things and culture like together, or has it pushed it apart? Like, with social media and stuff, you hear a lot of the negative, but like,
I think it has probably pushed us apart. And here's the data. The data is kids 16 to 22 have smaller social circles. They are engaging in dating and physical relationships much later in life, which may not be a terrible thing. They are more depressed. They have more anxiety, right? That is data. They have more of that at that age than other generations had at that age. And so it feels like it can be very isolating. Not a lot of people know this, but my first book was on raising children in a technology-enabled world.
Isn't that right?
When I
I
say
didn't
not
know
a
that.
lot of people, oh yeah, not a lot of people know because not a lot of people bought it. So it's a well-kept secret. It's a very well-kept
I gotta
secret.
look that up. I would be very interested in that.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, Amazon has suddenly sold tens of copies of it because all of a sudden when my friends found out I was going to have a kid, they all bought it for me individually. They all thought they were hilarious, being like, "Hey man, I have this great book on raising kids." I'm like, "You're an idiot." But thank you. I got $1 from Amazon for that. So a child, is capable in terms of the development of the prefrontal cortex of handling the responsibility of a phone at 11. Does that mean they should have it? I don't know. They're capable of handling the development of the use of social media by 13 or 14. Again, prefrontal cortex, development of judgment, things like that. Does that mean they should have it at that moment? I don't know. Look, every family's value system is different. Every family's
Right.
economic situation is different. Every child's developmental path is different. But I will tell you this little girl that's going to arrive in a week or so, she ain't getting a phone until she's like 30. That's
No, listen, I'm living that life. My son is 10, and like I have been, again, I'm chief technology officer, right? People look at me and they go, "Oh, you must have the best tech and you must," and I'm like, we live a pretty non-technical life, in the way of my son, and we really don't push because I'm kind of the same mentality that I think, they may be able to handle it, but they're not ready for it. Like just
yeah,
society is not ready for that. And I think I have lagged quite a bit, where like he's even now in the group of kids that are like, we really want phones. Everybody else has phones. When am I going to get
right.
it, kind of thing? So like, you know, I guess, it affects not only young people but old people because you hear a lot about scams and all of this stuff that happens with prepaid cards and things like that. Like, what's your opinion on that? Like, as you get older, it becomes a little harder to keep up with this stuff as well.
It does. I mean, I will certainly confess to not thinking about it in my own context. I feel pretty adept at doing those things and protecting myself from that. But I certainly think about my mother and now my mother-in-law
Right.
getting texts from random numbers who pretend they know them and hoping to engage in a conversation, then asking for money. And you think, oh, it can't happen to you until it happens to you or to someone you love. It scares the heck out of me and it infuriates me. And I do find it strange that our technology giants can't do more to protect.
Yeah.
I won't pretend to know a lot on this subject, Tom, to be
Yeah. Yeah.
candid. But when I get, and the things I get are political solicitations because I am a big political donor on both sides of the aisle, to be clear. I am a centrist. And so the number of texts I get from people that have no right to text me, by the way, they're legally not supposed to text me, how it is that that text goes out and then Verizon doesn't immediately shut down that number is beyond
Right.
me.
Right.
Like,
Right.
like how many people immediately report it as junk or block that caller and how they don't immediately shut down that number, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And why they would be authorized another number to the same account or same, but like, it seems like there are ways to protect against it. But again, not my area of expertise, so I don't know. I just get annoyed.
Yeah, look, it's very annoying for me. And like, dealing with security and stuff is very complex, especially with the aging architecture in America, like especially phones. Like that's an area I've
True.
spent a little bit of time with over the last, maybe 2 years. And it's shocking how old that technology is and how we're still kind of reliant on some of this
Hmm.
legacy stuff. And I think that's what drives a lot of the, well, we can't fix it because it's a big problem. And you're like, well, that's a big problem to solve for, though. You can move the mountain quite a
True.
bit. So
It is true. Look, I think about it in regards, again, to my mother and mother-in-law, and I just make sure that they have ACH blocks on their
yeah,
accounts.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And at the end of the day, where it gets you is the money,
yeah.
right? Like, so my mother can't accidentally go and send a bunch of money to somebody without me knowing.
Right, right.
And so if she needs to send money, great, no problem. It can get approved in 2 seconds. But if she's suddenly sending a $5,000 wire or ACH to somebody, that's not happening
Yeah, right.
without me approving.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, that's actually a good tip, actually.
Stop, stop it at the source, and that source is money.
That's true. It's true. How do you keep yourself hip with this stuff? Like not only technology, but just in general, like, usage of technology in service space and things like that. Like, how do you stay in front of that? Right.
I don't have a great answer to this. I won't pretend that I do, by the way. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not on any social media except for LinkedIn.
Yep.
So I'm not using Snap. I'm not using this. Our interns here and my nieces and nephews will be like, "Oh, you don't know this." I'm like, "No, and I don't care. You
Yeah. Yeah.
dumb little whatever. Smack you in the mouth."
Yeah.
But It's fine. Look, I think we have to accept our aging at some point.
Yeah,
You have, fight and don't go quietly into that good night, of course. But at the same time, he's like, oh, you don't know what is? I'm like, no, and I don't care, dude.
yeah, yeah.
I don't care. Like, I'm not using the right lingo anymore. Like, who cares?
That's right.
So I think it just becomes a notion of becoming at peace. But there is the idea that you should stay in touch with, the younger people in your life. There's actually a very big trend that our friends at The Economist just wrote about where universities in their excess campus space, because we do have a contracting population at that
Yep.
cohort, are having senior citizens live on campus. And
Really?
they're interacting with the college students. They're getting to go to classes and do all that. It is a wonderful thing to share wisdom with this younger generation and to have this older generation spend time with this younger generation because it does keep you young.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of that. That's really cool, actually.
Yeah. There are tens of thousands of people now retiring to college campuses.
That's insane. That actually makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. I could see that being very cool.
Yeah. There's actually one last thing on this. There's a very cool company called CoLife, which does the same with living arrangements. Elderly are living in homes.
Yeah.
Younger people can't afford homes. There is a epidemic of loneliness in this country. So we have younger people that can't afford homes. We have older people with underutilized assets, rooms in their homes who are lonely. Younger people are lonely. Let's put them together.
That's really neat.
And this company is killing it
I bet.
in the geos where they're at. They're not in that many cities yet, but they're just killing it. And it's a great idea,
It is a good
right?
idea.
Like everyone's keeping everybody company. Everyone's keeping everybody safe as long as everything's bedded and you get the right people and whatever.
Sure.
And it's extra income for the older folks, and it's a cheaper place to live for the younger folks.
Yeah.
I love that company.
That's really
Polite.
cool. I have to look that up. I have not heard of that either. See, these are interesting things. I'll shift a little bit to back to kind of business advice and frameworks and things. So like I have sort of a mild obsession with Simon Sinek and what about why and being an essentialist and things like that. Is there any frameworks that you live by or that you apply to work or your personal life and things like that that you would want to share?
I will say this. I do love the saying, and I do think it is indicative in my leadership style, if we could say that I have a style or that I'm a leader, is that people won't care how much you know unless they know how much you care.
Interesting.
My team definitively knows that I am here to help them. We talk about it every meeting. What can I do to help you? And it's not just in you doing your job, by the way. And we did this at Work Market all the time. I would say to people, the only way you can annoy me is if you come in and just say, hey, here's my 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm leaving. That's going to piss me off.
Yeah.
If you feel like this is no longer the place where you can learn the most, make the most money, and have the best time, right? Those to me are the 3 reasons people come to a company: money, learning, and fun. Then let me help you either change that for you here, because maybe you're not in the right chair, you're not in your zone of excellence, or let me help you go someplace else where like I am here to help you.
Yeah.
And so if this isn't the right place, my help extends beyond these 4 walls, and it extends beyond your professional development. I want to understand your personal development. Great. You want to become a better public speaker? Let's talk about how we can help you do that. How me as an individual, how us as an entity can help you get to your professional or personal development goals. Those are important things. And so we codify that every quarter. I need to know my direct reports and they need to know their direct reports, professional and personal development goals. And they need to be SMART goals, and we need to hold them to account and help them get there. So I do think that makes a big difference. And so that is something I think a lot about.
I will say this, and I was gonna say it at the end, but you always impacted me in our dealings because there were times when things were not abrasive, but like they in business, right? Like you're up against, you're adversarial, I guess, and like we've had those moments. We've had moments where we've done really great things together. Like I've really respected the way that you approached staying in touch with people, and you do have like a certain care and like aura about you that like is something that I really respect. And I think it's worth saying that like you definitely have that, and it comes across very much, and like your reputation precedes you with that as well. I know a lot of people that I look up to, and people that have worked for you that say really nice things when you're not in the room, and I think you should be proud of that. Like that, that is something.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure we can find an equal number of people that would say not nice things when I'm not in the room.
Oh yeah. I have that too. Yeah. Believe it. What does somebody have to do to grab your attention? So like if they're like, if they're in that situation, they want to walk in, like where
Sure.
do you go?
Well, look, if you're my team member, you just need to put time on my calendar. The calendar's open. Anyone can put time. Anyone can join a meeting. If they ask, you have to ask for permission if it's an outside person in the meeting, right? You can't just jump into a sales call and like be like, hey, I'm here now.
Yeah.
But if you're on my team, you just put time on my calendar. If you're somebody I know, you just reach out, right? Some people I will stop what I am doing because they are my dear friends, and that's very important to me. Others, I will say, hey, absolutely. And, because I'm kind of a jackass, I'll just say, hey, my assistant will find us a time to talk in the next couple of weeks. Like, that is what it is. We're all busy and priorities. But if you're someone I don't know, there is a 0% chance, literal 0% chance that I'm going to respond to a cold email.
Yeah.
A cold outreach on LinkedIn. 0%. But there is a 100% chance that I will respond. If a friend of mine says, hey, can you do me a favor and speak to Steve? He really wants to talk to you about X. All the time, I will do that. But if Steve reaches out cold, hey, I've read your book, hey, this one, delete. I don't know you. I'm not spending a second on you. But you have all the tools you need to find out who our common connections are. Just go on to LinkedIn.
Right.
And say, hey, can you please do me a favor and introduce me to Jeff? I do that all the time with people I want to talk with. Hey, Tom, can you do me a favor and introduce me to your connection, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Great. Right? So 100% of the time I'll respond to that, 0% of the time to the cold outreach.
Yeah, that dovetails with what I've heard from a lot of salespeople too. Like it's all about relationships, right? Like who you can lean on in introductions. That makes it. Cold calling's really hard, especially today.
It is really hard, but all of the tools you need for a warm intro are there, man.
Yeah, it's true.
There you can find the common connection.
Do you have any resources or mentors that have helped level up your success? Like, is there anybody you could point to?
There are, I think about my co-founders in different businesses who have always been, except for Boomerang, except for this one, have always been a little older, a little wiser, a little more experienced than me. And there's one in particular, and I reach out to him once a year. We don't really have that much of a relationship anymore. There was a falling out, but now, we're fine, but we just don't see each other. But whether it's his birthday or we'll run into each other randomly every couple of years, I will say to him, a solid 15% of the things I say, my mannerisms, my little sayings, come from you. And the impact you have had on my life is immeasurable, and I will always be super grateful for what you have helped me achieve. So I look up to him, but sadly, we just don't hang out that much anymore.
And I find that to be the case, though, as you age, right? And now that you're going to have children, that pulls you away even more.
That is fair. That is fair. So I have heard.
Yeah, you'll find out. So last question on this, like when you look at somebody then coming in, grabbing your attention, they put in the effort, they got a meeting with you. Do you think it's more important that they have like a really high level of EQ, or is intellect more like, can you shape one versus the other?
I think the most important thing they need to do is be prepared.
Okay.
Because I'm going to ask you, what's the goal of this meeting? What do you want to accomplish? With my own people, if they come in and we sit down, I'm like, all right, what's the goal of the meeting? They're like, oh, I don't know. I will get up and leave. I'm like, well, then there's no point in this meeting. Like, if you have a goal and something you want to achieve and an agenda to get to that goal, I'm here for you. Let's get it done. But, time is money, man. Like, I can't sit here for hours just sitting and trying to figure out what you want to know. So even when friends come in, by the way. And friends will come in for career advice. And I'll be like, no, you're talking to like work Jeff now. We're not just sitting around shooting the shit, having a beer.
Yeah.
What is your goal? What do you want to accomplish? Oh, well, I was hoping you could help me and make 3 intros to different firms that might do this. Great. Let's talk it through. How are we going to do that? What help do you need? We will hit your goal. You will leave here with 3 intros in your pocket. Done. And they go, wow, I never met Work Jeff. I'm like, yeah, well, Work Jeff is here to
He
get
doesn't
things
mess
done.
around. Yeah.
I'm here to play. And so it's the same with someone coming in, you know, if they're coming in because they have a biz startup idea and they want advice, or maybe they want money, because I used to write a lot of angel checks. I don't do that anymore, but what's the goal? And if they haven't come in prepared with their pitch because they're looking to raise money, with having done a little bit of research and just looked on my LinkedIn and saw like, what are the specific things you want to ask or know? I don't get up and walk away from people that come in that I don't know, because I mean, that's incredibly rude, but I mean, I'm checked out in that meeting. So I don't know about EQ versus, you know,
IQ,
anything else. If people are prepared, that is important. If they understand what they are looking for, I can help them. If they can't, you're not my family. I'm not going to help you work through it and kind of figure things out. I'm not here to train you. I'm here to help you achieve your goals. I remember my first meeting I had with my coach, and he walked in and he said, all right, what are your goals? I was like, what do you mean? He said, what do you want to accomplish this year, next 5 years in your life? I was like, I don't know. He goes, okay. He stood up. He said, I'm going to leave. My job is to help you achieve your goals. If you don't know what your goals are, I can't help you. I'll be back next week. Tell me what your goals are. And he walked out. And I thought, I love this guy.
Yeah. That's great.
Like, I'm here to, is that helping you? Is that helping you achieve your goals? I think that's a very, this goes back to your framework question. This should have been my answer to the framework question. Because, look, we all used to get really upset. And when you're in a place, you're ordering a sandwich and the people aren't paying attention and they're on their phones. What's my goal here? Is my goal to help that guy become a better deli employee? No.
Right.
My goal is to get a sandwich and get out of here. That's my goal.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hi, excuse me, can we, can I order this? Thank you. Not what I used to do, which is like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, are you on your phone? Or are you making sandwiches? Like, what's your deal?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That's not my goal here. My goal is just to get a sandwich and go home. Like, go back to the office.
Although you'd be very New Jersey if you did that. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, I used to do it. So it's not like if I did it, I used to do it. Like, I get really annoyed and angry and
right.
Who cares? I'm not there to course correct this dude. God bless him. God bless.
Do you have a favorite interview question? Is there anything that you would have asked in an interview?
There really, when I read this, by the way, in our kind of pre-read for our conversation, I took this to mean interview question as in what I ask people when they come to interview here.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, Tom. It is not fun to interview with me.
Hi.
And
Sure.
I am sure we can find hundreds of people that have come through Work Market or any of the other companies I've run, and they'll be like, ugh, Jeff, what a jackass in interviewing. Look, my job in interviewing is not to be your friend.
Right.
My goal is to discern whether or not you are going to be able to handle being here. And the best way I know how to do that is to make it really stressful for you.
Sure.
Because if you can't handle me coming at you with question after question, criticizing this, saying, no, that's wrong, do it again, then when our software goes down and a client's yelling at you, how are you going to handle that? Because that's the moment in which relationships are made or broken between a company and a client. When things are going wrong, I need to know you can handle it. And so I come at people hard in interviews. I cut them off. I'm rude, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And some people have said, this is so mean, and people started crying. And I'm like, the door's right there. You do not need to stay here. I am not holding you against your will. But if you want this job, you need to power through it and get me my answers. And I'm not saying that works for everybody. I'm not even pretending that it's right or whatever, but it works for me. It has worked for me in building the teams that I've had that have helped me, because the most important variable in the equations of the companies I've built and sold have been the teams and the people on them. And that has been an important part of it.
No, you're right. I think you've actually communicated a lot better than I would have. Like, I think I used to throw people off in interviews too, and it's not fun to interview people in general, right? Like, it's an uncomfortable situation. You're meeting them for the first time. You're trying to evaluate them. So there's a bit of like sales, and I used to actually sell some of the negatives of the company right in the interview, and
Yeah,
people would be like, "Well, why do you do that? Like, you're turning them off." And it's like, look, if they don't like that when we're our worst, they're gonna hate it,
100%.
when it gets bad. And actually, you bring up a great point, like what are you going to do when the customer's freaking out, right? What are you going to do when things are really tough? And, I used to throw them off. I don't know that I did it the same way, but like I would throw them off and try to change topics quite a bit and see if they would like
Yep.
say something. And people were like, "Hey, you jump around a lot," but I could see why, because you're trying to catch them. And it's like, yeah, I want to see what they'll do because customers are going to do that to you all the time.
I used to walk in with, a inane consulting question, right? How many tires are in India? How many
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
how many that? And I'd put a marker down on the table. There's a whiteboard right behind you. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I don't care what the answer is.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just care that they go, okay, and they put together a logical, reasonable, defensible point of view.
yeah.
Oh, well, there are this many this many that. This many. I had one person, I think the question that I was asking at that point in my career was, how many taxi cabs are there in New York City? I was like, here's a marker. Show me your work. I want to see your logic, how you think about it. I came back 5 minutes later. There was a number up on the board. I don't remember the number. It was like 16,742. I'm like, that's your answer? You just wrote a number up on the board? What the hell is that? And he goes, I picked up your phone and called 311.
Yeah, yeah. That's so funny because I had a college professor do that
Hired
exactly.
that guy, right? By the way.
100%, right? Like super efficient. I had a
Yeah.
college. It's so funny you say that. I have to share this story. I had a college professor that we were, you're in a normal classroom, and he would take you to the computer room that day. And it was odd that you're in the computer room, like why are we here? There's all these desktops in front. And he would throw this ridiculous question together. And he'd be like, "We're coming
Mhm.
back. We're going to evaluate." And as a group, he would put you in pairs of like three, and he would say, "You need to show me your work. You need to show me how you did this." And the dynamics around people arguing, like, we can't just Google it because we won't be able to show them how we got the work. And I was arguing, and like we're like very animated around, just ask the internet. And we did it. And in the end, I was able to convince the three people. We got up, we gave the answer, and he goes, "How'd you guys get to that answer? Because you have nothing on the page." And we're like, "We Googled it." And he was like, "Right answer, correct answer." And we were like, "You're kidding me,"
Oh, man.
Like it was incredible. So, um, that's crazy that you've done that. Crazy. So let's ask this thing. Let's ask this question. So, you've got a new venture. You've got some books
Yeah.
that you've released, things like that. Like, where can people go to find out more information about your current business, and if they were interested in those books? Because even like from the parenting one, like I'd be interested in purchasing.
Well, the best place to find out all things Jeff Wald is
Okay.
jeffwald.com, which I bought like 25 years ago, and I have finally put some content up. I mean, I guess it's been 2 years since I started putting content up on that thing. But the books are all there, my investments are there, and things like that. But the only place other than that, Tom, is LinkedIn. That's the only other place I share stuff.
That's cool. And is there anything that I can do to add any value to this podcast or to the message that you're trying to produce? Like, where can I help?
I appreciate you, and I appreciate that question. Tom, you were so incredibly, helpful to us at Work Market. The things that you were building inside your company and the things that I learned from you about how stuff was actually getting done were so incredibly
Mm,
important and impactful. I would just make the statement, you've already helped so much.
I appreciate that.
Nothing else to do right now,
I
man.
appreciate it.
We're in the early stages and we're figuring some stuff out, but in 6 months, I might need some more help.
But you definitely let me know. Jeff, thank you so much for doing this. I think your message, I think the way that you go about things is really, really unique. And like I can't thank you enough for doing this for me and appearing together.
My pleasure. Always, always a pleasure to speak with you. So
Awesome. Well,
glad to be here, and I'm glad and this was super fun conversation.
thank you. Thank you. Well, that was Cafe Technica. Please stay tuned for our next episodes. We're going to have some great guests. We're going to have great messages. We're going to have things that prove that Jeff and I are right or wrong, the opinions with others. So please keep listening and stay tuned.
Oops. Bye-bye.